Being busy is not the same as making progress. Progress comes from clarity. It doesn't come from chaos. Most people flip this too early. They chase income before they even have competence. Real wealth compounds quietly. I am Dan Thompson. I'm a chartered wealth manager and multi-business founder, and I am responsible for managing hundreds of millions of pounds and predominantly look after a lot of high net worth individuals and businesses when it comes to their money and their business. And today what I want to do is share with you my top 10 life lessons. And these literally would have saved me so many years of my life. So long before any of that and the success I've had over the last kind of decade or so, just like everyone else, I was trying to figure it all out. And these lessons come from that journey. So if you're in your 20s, 30s, early 40s, or really, to be honest, any stage of life and trying to build something meaningful, these 10 lessons will hopefully save you years of wasted time. Being busy is not the same as making progress. In my 20s, I worked ridiculous hours. I was always on, driving up and down the country, always busy, under a lot of stress when I look back at it. And you know the drill, I bought into the whole hustle culture mentality. And I really thought I was making progress. And I was to a degree, just not as much progress as I could have been making, because the reality is the busyness that I was experiencing was just masking a lack of clarity in my life back then. And the activity replaced true strategy. The stress and the working hours, they almost became a badge of honor. And I was proud, at the time, because I was working so much. Whereas now I just realized I was a busy idiot a lot of the time. And I see this constantly now with founders and professionals that I advise. Calendars full, lives empty of direction. And what you soon realize is progress comes from clarity. It doesn't come from chaos. Progress doesn't come from doing more things. What it does is it comes from doing fewer things deliberately, but with intention. So what I would do is I would ask yourself some simple questions. What am I avoiding by staying busy? And if I cut my workload by 50%, what would actually move the needle in my life? What would actually matter to me? Because working smarter beats working harder every single day. But if you combine the two, it's a superpower. Your environment will shape you more than motivation ever will. And this is something that I underestimated for so many years, how much my environment was shaping me, who I was around, what I thought was normal, what I tolerated, and more importantly, what was actually entering into my subconscious. And I wish I paid attention to that more in my 20s, because you don't rise to your goals, you fall to the level of your environment and the people you're around. Changing countries, changing rooms, changing expectations, that did more for me than any book or course could ever have done. And to give you some examples from my own life, changing countries and spending more time now in Dubai, in the UAE, has significantly raised my standards. Being around more serious operators, founders, like-minded people has raised my baseline, but also significantly increased my curiosity, especially around what is actually possible. Leaving certain rooms and environments has removed unnecessary noise or comparisons that were completely unnecessary. And what you realize is you don't actually need more motivation, you just need fewer bad inputs, because your information diet and the people you're around, and I know it's so cliche to say this, is one of the most important decisions you will ever make in your life. So to give you some practical application to this lesson, I would audit your circle every 6 months. I would reduce exposure to people who normalize stagnation and mediocrity. I would spend more time where your ambition feels average and you feel uncomfortable. Play the long game, the 70-30 game early. That's learning first, earning second. In my early years, the best returns didn't come from money, they came from learning. And the golden rule, which I followed deliberately, was 70% learning, 30% earning, and 5 to 10 focused years. And that served me very well. I was always trying to be in the right environment with the best possible opportunity and didn't focus on what my salary or my earnings were in the short term, because I knew it would follow. And this meant choosing a role for exposure, not for ego, taking on responsibility well before reward. And I still do that to this day, investing heavily in skills instead of lifestyle. Again, something I do to this day. Money will compound later. It is inevitable, but skills compound immediately. Most people flip this too early. It's that simple. They chase income before they even have competence. And that is how you inevitably are going to cap upside. What's really interesting is there's that thing you get told, when you're in your 20s, you got to find yourself. You don't find yourself. You have to build yourself. I don't believe in that statement you need to find yourself at all. You choose values, you build discipline, you decide what you want to tolerate, you decide what your identity is going to be. And that is earned through consistent actions repeated over time. Live below your first success. Don't set lifestyle anchors, because your first win as you become more successful is typically the most dangerous one, because the moment income rises, typically a lot of people start to go out and upgrade their lifestyle. They get a new car, they might get a bigger house, they might buy watches, more fancy holidays, and a lifestyle that quietly then becomes permanent. And once these costs are locked in, something really subtle happens. Your freedom disappears, the flexibility you once have is gone, and that is exactly what I call lifestyle anchors. You lock yourself into decisions that you didn't consciously choose. And you're no longer working because you want to, you're working because the machine needs feeding. You need to keep paying for all these costs. And the irony is this often happens right when someone starts to become successful. And the founders and investors that build real wealth usually do the exact opposite. They practice delayed gratification. They resist the urge to upgrade their lifestyle. Instead of spending their first success, what they do is they protect it. They keep their cost base flexible. They keep their standard of living low. They buy assets, they reinvest, they buy their time back, because the early years of success are not the time to show the world you've made it. It's so easy now with social media to seek validation and prove to the world you're successful, but it comes at such a significant cost. And this is such a huge mistake I sadly see with people who are in their 20s and early 30s, and sadly don't learn it till a lot later in life. And then they realize the costs are so significant and it's potentially too late. When you're successful in your early years, it's the time to build the foundations to be truly financially free. The difference is simple. Looking successful is easy. It's so easy to rent a car, buy watches with the first big paycheck, but to be truly financially free is so rare. And freedom usually belongs to the people that practice delayed gratification longer than everyone else. Don't play short-term games. Don't join them. Status image, quick wins, short-term validation, they are no good for you. I chased some of that in my 20s, but thankfully didn't get sucked into it, and it wasn't my priority. It wasn't my focus. I played the long game. The people who win quietly are the ones that think in decades, while everyone else is thinking in weekends. Your thought process, or my insight even to this, would be real wealth compounds quietly. It's building habits, being consistent. Loud success is often fragile, and that's so relevant here in Dubai. Consistency beats intensity every single time. The most successful people I know are boringly consistent. In fact, the most successful person I know is probably the most boringly consistent person that I've ever met. But I have massive respect for how disciplined he is when it comes to his routine. It won't matter in 10 years' time, so don't overreact today. Don't get sucked into short-term games. Play games you're willing to play for decades with the right people. Relationships compound harder than money ever will, because this is something I underestimated for so long, especially in my 20s, where relationships feel naturally more interchangeable, and they aren't, because over a long enough time horizon the same names keep reappearing, because people will remember how you behaved when there was no upside, or how you handled certain things under pressure, especially when the pressure is significant enough, whether you kept your word or not. Success doesn't exclude neglect, and ambition doesn't replace accountability. Who you build with, personally or in a professional setting, matters more than how fast you build. And this is something that social media never tells you, because your reputation is actually built in the rooms you're not in. What are people saying about you when you're not around? What do you stand for? In my career and in business, the biggest opportunities didn't come from loud self-promotion or personal branding too early, or being visible before actually being excellent and good at what I do. It came from doing work consistently and being reliable and being dependable under pressure, especially when you're dealing with people's money. Letting other people speak for me and not having to self-promote myself. I've seen one introduction turn into a decade-long partnership, because brand without reputation is so fragile, but the right reputation compounds even when you're silent. So you have to focus on being respected before being recognized, because you want to earn the respect and trust of people who want to play long-term games with you. You cannot outsmart the fundamentals. So whether it's investing, business, money, health, wealth, relationships, fundamentals will always win. People are always looking for shortcuts, the new hack, anything to skip genuine hard work. But across every domain of life, every pillar of life, the same pattern repeats. In health, it isn't supplements, it's the right sleep, training, diet, and being consistent. When it comes to investing, it isn't clever stock picking, it's being disciplined, it's diversification, it's time in the market, it's avoiding making catastrophic mistakes or emotionally charged decisions. In business, it isn't clever marketing tactics, it's delivering true value to your customer, to your clients, cash flow, reputation, delivering value repeatedly. And in relationships, it's not grand gestures, it's communication, it's truth, it's honesty, and especially over long periods of time. So if you skip the fundamentals, you will pay for it later, because fundamentals may be boring, they don't look impressive, they don't generate headlines, they don't look great on social media, but they quietly compound underneath everything else. Simple truths tend to dominate over time, especially over decades, because sleep always beats supplements, long-term assets always beat short-term income, and trust beats tactics. Deep work is a superpower. Most founders today are drowning in noise. They have meetings, notifications, emails. The information volume is significant, but the highest value work rarely screams for attention the loudest. It requires quiet thinking, deep work. The most productive periods of my career came when I protected my time, protected my morning specifically, and focused on deep work and moving the needle in my personal life or my businesses. No meetings, no emails, no distractions, phone on DND, just thinking, building, creating. Because if your day is filled with reactive activity, constant noise, distractions, you can spend years climbing the wrong ladder. And I cannot stress this enough. By the time you realize what's happened, you're already at the top of the wrong wall. Choose mentors, not gurus, because the internet has created this strange phenomenon. There's thousands of gurus and very few genuine mentors. A guru sells inspiration online. A mentor shares real life or business experience. A guru tells you what you want to hear. A really good mentor tells you what you need to hear. And some of the best mentors that have ever helped me weren't loud online personalities. They were people who were quietly building serious businesses, serious wealth behind the scenes. The lesson here is simple: don't follow charisma. Nobody is coming to save you. And this is a really tough lesson that I learned early on in my career, especially when I went through quite a lot of adversity in my life, both in my personal life and my business. Nobody is coming to rescue you, not the government, not your boss, not the economy. And at some point in your life, you realize something that is very, very simple. You are responsible for your own trajectory of your life. That's uncomfortable sometimes at first for some people, because it removes every excuse and puts the responsibility on you. But it's also incredibly empowering, because you have the control. Because once you accept that responsibility, everything else becomes a decision. Your career, your health, your relationships, your finances. Most people spend years waiting for permission, waiting for the perfect opportunity, the perfect time. But progress usually starts the moment you realize that no one is coming. So you might as well begin. Life isn't about winning. It's about alignment. A successful life isn't one that looks impressive, especially to others and from the outside. It's about one that feels aligned to you. And alignment means work that matches your own values, doing meaningful work, ambition that doesn't destroy your health along the way, success that doesn't hollow or ruin your relationships, because winning at the wrong game will still feel like losing. Looking back, these lessons seem so obvious now, but to a 20-year-old version of Dan, you don't appreciate these lessons or really truly understand them until you've had the lived experience. But when you're young, you only really learn through experience, and often they are very expensive mistakes to learn and come at such a huge cost, and not just financial. So if you're early in your journey, hopefully some of the lessons today help you avoid some unnecessary mistakes, because success isn't about doing extraordinary things. It's about doing the right things consistently over time. If you like today's video, please hit like and a subscribe, and I want to keep putting out logical, practical, rational content out there to help other people who are on their journey.